men and boys are subjected to a whole raft of disadvantages structurally in our society. And then just to rub salt in the wound, Britain appears to hate men because our culture is just, I don't know, a mess of misandry, I would say.
Yeah.
I would say that goes far beyond Britain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I would like to quote our Scottish tyrant again.
Our leader, the supreme one.
Yeah, the supreme leader. She said in an interview with Women's Hour, I said women's issues, women's equality, right at the heart of everything the Scottish government does. And
well, she's not lying.
You can see that in practice, that the SNP intentionally and systematically ignore men, and at the moment they are pushing towards a bill that makes misandry, but exclusively misandry, a standalone crime.
Misogyny.
Oh, sorry, misogyny. Yes, misogyny. That's the word. Misogyny is standalone crime, and the fact that they have the audacity to do that shows how deep the misandry goes in society. And Lord Brackedale, who was actually in charge of the hate crime legislation, he proposed that it should be gendered hate should be part of the hate crimes. And feminist organizations said, no, 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 no. Only misogyny, not misandry, because if you make misandry a hate crime, then you put women in danger.
Yeah.
Don't know how, don't know why.
Well, because men will abuse it to lie that women have done nasty things.
And women would never do that.
No, women would never do that.
No. Yeah. And I think, a couple of months ago, a young woman, I think she was 17 at the time, she's 18 now, she stabbed a boy to death at a party because he was a man. She said so. She said she did it because she hates men. And she is in prison, and the women in prison don't want anything to do with her because she's so hateful towards men. She apparently is awful, like the epitome of a misandrist. Yeah.
I bet there's plenty of
like fans. A little bit like the woman that wrote the Scum Manifesto. Don't know.
But Valerie Solomas.
Yeah.
There was an SNP who an SNP MP who was talking about a constituency in Glasgow that has created an all-female shortlist, and he said that he wants to fight that's wrong, and he believes he's the best candidate for the constituency, and I was like, good for you, but you've kind of already drank the poison if you're with the SNP, like you've dug your own grave with this one. It's not as if the signs weren't there that this is the kind of thing they would do.
Yeah.
It's like that whole kind of hand on head moment, like how did this come to be? And it's like, well, it happened everywhere else.
Would you guys say, do you think the overall public is misogynist, misandrist, or would you say that the institutions and the media are misandrist, and to what extent the two of them?
Well, I would say that first of all, it depends on your definition of what counts as misandry, because a lot of kind of very casual things would count as like microaggressions of misandry, if you like. I think that the average public, including men, are capable of misandry in the sense that they will overlook things that are in front of their face, like the plentiful examples of women hitting men. We've seen the YouTube videos that they conduct these experiments and people just walk past, or they stop and they laugh. That's misandrist. But I would say that the institutions pursue it deliberately. in a way that the average public member does not.
Would you say it's misandrist, or would you say it's part of the empathy gap? Because I don't think it's the same thing.
I would say that it's primarily the empathy gap, but I would say that the empathy gap is based on misandry, or is based on the human compulsion to not be overly disturbed by male suffering. You know, it's been a fact of our nature that we had to see men die, see men get hurt, not just in war, in peacetime as well, because there was plenty of dangerous jobs. We've developed this kind of almost desensitization from male suffering that we don't have for women and children. So I would say that that's misandrist in nature, and that's where the empathy gap comes from.
I think if you would ask people, do you think that a male victim of domestic abuse should get the same help as a female victim of domestic abuse? I think the overwhelming majority of people will say, absolutely, of course, no question. So I think in theory, people are for equality. But I think when you're so trained, like when you watch movies, men are disposable, women are always like, the movies force you to an emotional connection as soon as a woman breaks her fingernail, but if like 20 men are shot, it's more funny. So I think we're trained not to see certain things, but I think if you ask them, they are more for equality.
I would say that the premise of your question has a flaw in it, Philip, which is when you say are male victims of abuse, should they be given the same help that female victims of abuse are, you're already telling the person that some authority has decided they are abuse victims. So whereas you could possibly say, if a man is hit by a woman, does he deserve the same help as if a man hits a woman?
See, but that to me is the empathy gap, where the other thing would be misandry. So if you tell them both people have experienced the same thing, or both are victims of domestic abuse, should they get the same help? And a person says no, that to me is misandrist. If people perceive experiences of men and experiences of women differently, I think that's part of the empathy gap and part of gender difference, perceived gender differences, and I can't lump them both together, because then we are in the area of every behavior of every man towards a woman is sexism. So if you help a woman, it's sexism. If you don't help a woman, it's sexism. But if you talk about sexism, you assume negative, like you connect it to a negative impulse. And I don't think that most people have a negative impulse. I think they're just trained towards it. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's really useful to define these terms, actually, and to make that distinction, because, you know, the definition of misogyny is a hatred of women because they are women. And, you know, these kind of hate crimes that are being rolled out in various places in the UK and also in Scotland, you know, it's like if a man wolf whistles at a woman, that's, you know, a form of misogyny. And it's like, how ridiculous is that? You know, there was someone from the SNP who gave a speech about the pickup artists and was saying, like, look, these people hate women. And it's like, you know, they're such misogynists. And it's like, so far from the truth. I think pickup artists, for me, you know, I think they love women to a fault, and they possibly hate themselves and think the only place they can get validation from is women and casual encounters with women.
I would think there is disrespect towards. So I think there are situations of disrespect towards women, but I think situations of hate towards women are incredibly rare, but I think hate towards men is incredibly common.
Yeah, well, I mean, you only have to look at The Guardian every day to see that, and
Yeah.
not only, I mean, is it common? I think that most of the public don't hate men at all. I think most of the public love their fathers and sons and brothers and friends and husbands and lovers. But the kind of the establishment, feminism has taken a long march through the institutions, and especially the university, like we talked about earlier, they are just indoctrination camps that you have to go there to become a bigot and an idiot. But they pump out all of our MPs and journalists and social workers, officers, and there was an article in The Guardian on the 29th, just a couple of days ago, and it was focused on the US because it was by Brad Chilcott, who's White Ribbon's new executive director.
I heard about that.
Australia. But it was called "It Is All Men to Varying Degrees. Men's violence against women is a systemic crisis." And not only did he completely airbrush male victims or women who were victims of other women, but it's full of hate towards men. This idea that men oppress women is misandrist, and it's used to justify kind of treating what looks like a nail because you've painted it like that with a hammer. He talks about, and it's more problems with definitions. He talks about gender inequality as structural violence, and it's like, I don't think it's useful to broaden the word violence to include gender inequality, for God's sake. Violence is the act of harming another individual physically. That's it. Anything else demeans the word. But I mean, saying that about this, and it was full of misandry, and it was, total empathy gap, even for women who are victims of women. But one of the first things he said in this article was, "Why has been the most consistent response when I've told my progressive friends that I've taken on the role of executive director of White Ribbon Australia." And it's like, so look, even progressives are like, what the fuck, dude? You really need to do that? Is this narrative actually true and useful?
It's like women who are victims of other women, as far as the feminist narrative sees, they're collateral damage. They're the lamb to be sacrificed in order to maintain the narrative.
And children.
Yes, and children as well. It was my sociology lecturer, the one I've gone on about. He used to say that we should use that. We should use the violence against women that other women commit, particularly in lesbian relationships, to say, if they don't recognize that women can be violent, they're homophobic, and they're leaving lesbians hung out to dry. And hopefully that would be a stepping stone, like first realizing that women can be violent, and then realizing that women can be violent towards men. Because one thing that feminists quite often claim credit for is they like to say, oh, we do help men. For example, we expanded the FBI definition of rape to include men. But what they did was expand it to include male rape by other men, not ever male rape by women. And so it's more like they didn't expand the definition of victims, they expanded the definitions of the ways that males could perpetrate rape.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I picked up on was from July the 23rd, and it was...
Just a second.
Yeah.
A little anecdote about White Ribbon. Last year, I attended a meeting in Perth in Scotland. It was called Facing Down the Resistance. It was a feminist meeting that wanted to deal with the resistance, and I thought, as part of the resistance, I should probably listen to that. So I drove all the way to Perth, and Richard Lucas, the leader of the Scottish Family Party, he was also there incognito, and I was there and I listened to it and I participated in the conversation. And I'm going to talk about that like afternoon another time, because yeah, but two people from White Ribbon were there as well, and the two guys from White Ribbon were so self-loathing and so disgustingly obedient that even the feminists in the room told them pretty much, what the fuck are you talking about? Because they said, oh, in the universities, women are really held back. And as a woman in, it was about English literature. He was like, I think as a woman in English literature, you can't really express yourself because patriarchal structures are holding you back. And then these women on stage that actually were students in literature, they looked at him and they were like, thank you for asking this question, but what the fuck? Like, the literature department has been in female hand for decades, and there are almost no man. So even the feminists said, dude, like, what's wrong with you? That was, but that's White Ribbon in a nutshell.
Yeah, I have to wonder with these, like, you know, radical male feminists, it's like, are they actually misogynists, like genuine misogynists? And they just think like, well, I hate women, and then they project it on all men because they must too, and then they think like, well, they need protecting from me, so they must need protecting from all men.
I remember Karen Strawn saying that if you're a male rapist, you would love feminism. You know, because feminism doesn't tell you that you're a freak, you're an outlier, you know, you are the scum of society. Feminism tells you that all men do it. All men want to do it. It's happening constantly. And it's not even your fault. It's the patriarchal structure that taught you. This is who you were destined to become from the day.
And also, feminism tells you that you should be absolutely fine walking through the park alone at night in a miniskirt.
Like, sometimes I think it's come full circle. Like, as in, so society started with, a lot of dangers that were physical and tangible and real, that we protected women from. So we didn't let them in the workplace because the workplace was so dangerous. We didn't let them go to war because war was so dangerous. We protected them from all of these things. And then women fought when technology evolved to lessen the impact of those dangers. Women fought to be seen as just as capable as men, and we had a big upswing, through the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and now we're back where we started, where to be a progressive man, you are to say women are weak, women are fragile, women are delicate, women can't handle it. We as men, we need to handle it for them.
While simultaneously saying that women are absolutely better at absolutely everything.
Well, isn't that what you do to a child? Don't you tell the child they're the most specialist, bestest, most amazingest thing that ever? You could be president. Do you hear that, Liz? You could be president one day. Just you believe that. Just you believe, you shining little star, that you could be president one day.
Don't tell women they can be president. They tell women there's a glass ceiling and they'll never make it, and that's why the
male feminists tell them. Male feminists tell them all the time that the world would be in such better hands if it was ruled by women. Like Michael Moore standing on the stage at the Women's March in 2017, being like, "I am sick of men in power. Men in power are evil. We need women in power."
Yeah, but so did Mark Hamill. Did you see that tweet he sent? It was like, men have been in power for centuries, and look at the state of the place. It's time we moved aside and let women take the reins of power, or something.
Come on, Liz. Don't ruin Star Wars for me any more than Disney already has.
It ruined it. It broke art, and so I like
Yeah,
to
no.
solve the mystery.
I've got a question. So let's say
Problem cleared is a problem doubled.
let's say that women were to hold all power, which I would argue they already do to a large degree. But let's say all positions of power are held by women. Do you think that what do you think would happen? Do you think,
I think
there would be apartheid, like a proper apartheid, or?
Well, sorry, Liz, you go first.
I think there would be more wars based
Okay.
on the fact that if you look at the gender breakdown or the sex breakdown of MPs who voted for intervention in Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan, women were much more likely to vote in favour of intervention.
Okay.
I think that there would be more gender segregation, or more male disadvantage in terms of services, because there are a higher proportion, although they're not the only MPs who campaign for women on behalf of women and neglect men, but more women MPs kind of want their legacy to be the defender of women and the saviour of women and stuff like that. Although, Michael Gove gives them a run for their money, as will be revealed shortly, but I can't tell you about that. And I think, but here's a counter question. What do you think about Neil Linden's idea that all Member of Parliament roles should be held by one man and one woman, job sharing? Because I think that'd be cool.
Do you know what? At this stage, I'd be willing to try anything.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
No more arguments.
Yeah.
I wonder. I just wonder if we finally get this power grabbing struggle, if we would get that out of the way and say, okay, 50-50-50, everything 50-50, can we now try to deal with real issues and lay down our guns?
Exactly.
Unfortunately, even in countries where the power is in the hands of women, like in Scotland, it feels like they want more power. But there are, for example, Finland at the moment. I think all parties are led by women at the moment, and I haven't really looked into it. It's quite possible that if women finally got everything, that they are more willing to share. It's possible. I think in Scandinavian countries, actually, they do share a little. There's more shared parenting, stuff like that, but it's a different society. I think they're overall more egalitarian.
Well,
yeah.
can I say, in terms of Neil Linden's idea, I would say if you did that tomorrow, if you made every position in Parliament dual role, that feminists would still complain that if anyone did, if any one position introduced something they didn't like, they would say clearly that man is bullying that woman. I would think it's possible, that if everything was the purview of women, if every position was held by women, then maybe women actually would be kinder. I think that, I said on Twitter that if the world was ruled by women, very little would change because men have always done what women wanted. But I do think it's possible because so much of feminism's power comes from the idea of being a victim, and they use the kind of the obvious examples of CEOs and MPs rather than the more subtle example of who are the laws made for, who is the money at home being spent by. I think if the obvious examples were given over to women, unless feminism has another trick up its sleeve, which I wouldn't be surprised by, it's quite possible that women would become more relaxed, and they would then be more willing to share, more willing to be empathetic, because I do believe that women at heart are empathetic and caring. It's just when they feel they're under attack, they become very reserved, they become quite selfish, they become like almost they have to invert and hoard things in case, because they know that they are more vulnerable than men. And you can see it. You were talking about the women were saying, more women MPs statistically voted for intervention than male MPs. And I think you can see that on the micro scale when you have, like, say, a man and a woman in bed, and a woman hears something downstairs, and she says, what was that? Was that a burglar? And the man says, oh, it's probably nothing, go to sleep. And she's like, no, go check. And that's kind of like what's happening here, where, the women are saying, is that a threat to our country? And the men are saying, well, it's probably fine. And the women are saying, no, go check. So I do think when women feel threatened, they become selfish because they know that they're vulnerable. And that when they don't feel threatened, they become much more compassionate and sympathetic. So if they hold all the visible roles, it's possible that society would be a lot better.
Okay, I'm wondering, so, and I was thinking that before, I think that women are so hostile because they hate being women. I think they hate themselves. Because let's be honest, biology fucked women big time. You bleed once a month, you are emotionally unstable, you are physically weaker, you are like forced to spend more time with the children, even if you don't want to, kind of, at least in the beginning. There are certain things, like you're more likely to get a migraine, you're more likely to feel cold, and so on. And also temperamental, from the temperament, women are more likely to be anxious, women are more likely to suffer from certain things. So let's just say nature fucked you. And I do think that internally a lot of women feel that way. And I do think that there is resentment for man being man. And I think that a lot of women internally want to punish man for the punishment nature gave them. And I think the only way out of that would be for women, for society to love femininity so much and cherish motherhood and just say, look at the wonder that women bring to society, the wonder of birth. We man can't do that. Like, this is like, the world is in your hands, it's in your belly. You are the creator of life. Let that be the payment, or payment is the wrong word, but let that be what the payment for the pain you have to go through.
The reward.
Man, do you know what I'm talking about? Because I do think that women have the right to feel resentful. I think men have the right to feel resentful to society now. But I'm super happy to be a man. I wouldn't want to bleed once a month. But on the other hand, I'm like, oh my God, giving birth, like creating life, that is such a gift from God. To me, that's the biggest wonder in the world, is being able to create life.
Can I weigh in, Liz? Or do you want to answer straight away?
Well, you go on, you jump in.
I just wanted to say, I think Philip does have, to some extent, a point. That, for example, when I was in my gender studies class, the first class we had, they said, talk about, the differences between men and women. What are the pros? What are the cons? And you could see the lecturer that every time a woman would talk about difficulty with a woman. She was waiting for something, she was clearly ready for something, and then eventually periods came up, and she was like, yes, exactly, periods are awful, I hate periods so much, and the fact that we can't stand up to pee, and oh my god, and it was really juvenile, that you're kind of like, you're a 40-year-old woman, calm down. And I came home to my mother and said this was, the experience in class. The lecturer, far more than the students, was obsessed with talking about periods. And she said, I never resented my periods because it meant I could have my babies.
Yeah.
My mother sees the ability to give life as worth any pain that she has gone through.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if Philip has a point, which, from my personal perspective, it's not something that resonates with me, what he's saying. But if he has a point, I think it's feminism's fault because, I think it's like we've worshipped women, and we've adored women and thought they were amazing, life-giving and just fantastic. And then, feminism came along and said all the things that are naturally feminine and that you want to do are, dirty and disgusting and, prevent you from self-actualizing because you can only do that in an office apparently. And so I think maybe feminism does say to women, the male kind of standard of like power is the gold standard, and if you're not reaching that, then you're failing the sisterhood, and most women don't want the high paying job and the time away from their family and all that kind of stuff. They want to be having babies and at home. But, I think on the whole, I don't think women resent being women. I think on the whole, women tend to enjoy being women immensely and get a kick out of makeup and high heels and all of that fun that goes along with being a woman.
I completely agree with Liz that I don't think women have any innate, inherent resentment for being a woman. But if you grew up in this culture where women do suffer physically, as in, so nobody denies that periods are a difficult thing to go through. Nobody denies that childbirth is one of the most egregious pains that you could ever suffer. But if you went through all of that and you got told that you're hated, that you're downtrodden, you're oppressed, you're abused, you're unloved, then you would really resent being a woman. Mm-hmm. I think if we recognize that society does and has always valued women and worshipped women, that women wouldn't resent it.
To clarify that, of course, I don't mean all women resent men. And what you guys are saying is exactly it. I think in the past there was a balance where men and women understood their place in society and also understood their worth to society. But I think that feminism has put this seed of doubt or resentment. And I think there are things that are easily that you can easily manipulate, and I think they did that very well. They tapped into that.
I think also that through feminist lobbying for all these kind of unjust, unequal laws and application of laws, like in the divorce courts and the family courts and stuff like this, I think they've removed from women any clear pathways to how you become a good woman. And so they've left women in this state of confusion and then given them all these reasons to make really bad decisions. And, of course you're going to end up hating yourself if you mess your life up because you've broken up your family for no good reason and your children are suffering and you've caused pain to everyone in the family and all this kind of stuff.
You don't have children.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so many women in their 40s that don't have children because they were told that that's not important. A lot of them, I'm pretty sure, do feel a sadness inside, and yeah, and I had this conversation with a neighbor on Facebook recently, and they said, "Oh, single childless women are the happiest in the world, happiest people, statistics say." And I said, "Well, happy doesn't mean you are fulfilled." And I said, "Well," and then the conversation quickly changed into cats and drinking red wine.
Feminism very much seems like, one of those kind of trickster genies or whatever that you would get in a fable, where it appears to women and it says, I can give you wealth, I can give you power, I can give you status, I can give you everything you've ever wanted, but secretly the flip side of that is you will be unhappy, your family will be destroyed, you will feel constantly under attack, you will feel that you're at war with the other gender. Well, there was always a much higher price to pay than what feminism offered.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that sounds like? That doesn't sound like a evil genie. That sounds biblical.
Like the devil.
It sounds outright biblical. It's like, I can give you this freedom and this power, and you don't have to take any responsibility. And then you just see how that story plays out, and in the end, not so good. Right?
Women are unfulfilled, and their happiness is declining by the decade.
Yeah, really. So, I think that is the state of the nation, and I would like to ask you people: is it going up or is it going down? What do you feel? Are we improving, or is it getting darker?
I would I would say that's a great question for the audience to answer in the comments, and for us to discuss next time. And I think that it's been an absolute privilege doing this, especially for our first time ever. And I incredibly look forward to a future of doing this.
Yeah. What we've planned in for the future is we're going to have sessions like this one. We're going to also invite other people. We're going to try to invite some guests. And this, we're going to try to do a weekly show in regards to men's rights in the UK.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.